Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. We bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your hosts, Chris Jennings and Dr. Mike Brazier.
Joining us today is Chris Akin, owner and operator of Webb Footed Kennels, and also a representative from SportDog Brand. Chris, welcome to the DU Podcast.
Thank you, buddy.
Hey, man, we got you on the show today, and we're going to talk a little bit of e-collars. We're going to talk just some overall training. But before we get into this, I kind of want you to give an introduction of yourself to our audience as far as where you're located, what you do, how long you've been doing it. And I think a lot of our audience is probably pretty familiar with it, but I think that it'll be great for you to just kind of introduce yourself.
Well, I'm from Jonesboro, Arkansas, which is in the northeast corner of Arkansas, about an hour and a half from Memphis. And we're right in the middle of the heart of all the ducks. And so we've got Black River, White River, Langill, Cache River, Mississippi River, Langill, all of them. I mean, my house sits right dead in the middle. So we're in duck country. We live and breathe and think ducks year round. And so I've got a kennel that I operate and I have for 31 years for duck hunters and people wanting family pets and companions. And we train for them. And, it's a large kennel. We operate around 100 dogs at a time. And so we train dogs for other people. We also sell puppies and we sell trained dogs and all that. So we're just, we're in the dog business and we're in the dog world and we've trained lots of dogs. And, we've been doing it long enough now. We're training everybody's third and fourth dog and now we're training for their children and all that. It's a big time repeat business for us. And we got the same clients now we literally had 20 and 30 years ago. So it's a lot of fun. Watched us all grow old together and bringing their kids and grandkids out and all that. And, just a big family affair for us. So it's a great business. It's been really good to us and just kind of keeps us in the duck hunting world year round, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And you're right. You are right in the heart of duck country for sure.
We are.
And before we get into that, into the other conversation that we're supposed to have, just because we have you right here on short notice, what's your expectations on duck season right now?
Well, we're bone dry here. I mean, it is as dry. My place is right on the side of the Cache River, and it's as low right now as it's been in years, and with no forecast of any kind of substantial rain in the future. So I think we're going to have a real big, spectacular show. Our season comes in here in just a week from Saturday. I think we're going to have a bang-up hunt on Saturday and probably an okay hunt on Sunday, and then it's going to fizzle out after that. But it's because we just don't have enough surface water here to hold these birds and keep them in here. So, everything that's pumped, we got over $3 diesel here in Arkansas right now, even with farm fuel. And so people are not getting crazy with flooding fields for no reason. I mean, if somebody's got water in the field, there are going to be some gun barrels in it, if you know what I'm saying. So these ducks aren't going to have very many places to refuge. They're not going to have any places to rest. So I suspect it's going to be a pretty weak start after the first couple of days. I think it'll really, really be weak, and we're going to need some weather up north to get some ducks in here. Last year we had a real good cold front, lots of water. First 10 days was just lights out and just killed them every day. And then the weather kind of got mild up north and just kind of fizzled out on us. And we kind of had a pretty flat season after that. But, we're just so weather related down here in the South, depending on what happens north of us. And we need lots of snow, lots of ice, good cold temperatures to keep that snow and ice on the ground, cover up that feed supply so these birds will come on down here to us. And it seems like every year it gets warmer and warmer above us, So it's just these ducks that get down here now, they're migrating on the calendar, not because they have to. And so we just don't have the numbers that we're looking for by depending on that calendar, those calendar ducks I call them versus forced ducks, anyway, but it's going to be fun. I'm in my mid-50s now, and I'm kind of going hunting for a different reason. I'm not your guy on Facebook that's got to have a stack of greenheads on there to have a good day. I just enjoy being out there, enjoy going, spend time with my family and my friends and my dogs, and we get to, if a duck gets in the way and we shoot him, so be it. But the rest of it, we're going to have a good time no matter what. I've missed one day since I was a junior in high school, and I go every day, and I wouldn't miss it for nothing. And I just love everything about it, the atmosphere and the memories and everything we got. So I go for a lot of different reasons than most people do. I don't care about the killing. I have killed a few, I intend to kill a few more, but that's not the reason I go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you're right. I think the lack of water across the landscape in Arkansas right now is probably going to hurt us after, those first few days. Like you said, you got your calendar ducks in there. And I think we'll probably preview that on a podcast coming up here very soon. So let's roll into some retriever training conversation. And, specifically, we're talking SportDog brand products here and e-collars. And we'll do some kind of mid-season, retriever training tips and things like that. But I really want to get it started kind of where we left off with Tom Dawkin last month. He came on the show talking about SportDog brand products and things like that. And we really got into the e-collar stuff. And what he was kind of explaining is his time frame for introducing the e-collar. And I kind of wanted you to provide your perspectives on when and how and why is like the first step when you start introducing your dogs to the e-collars.
Well, it's real simple. Now, the first thing anybody needs to understand about an e-collar is e-collars are merely a polishing tool, okay? So let's think of us building furniture, and let's think of the final step being the shellac, okay? And that final step that makes that wood grain really pop out and really make the shine, and really the part that really polishes and the part that really makes that wood really look good, right? And it also protects the wood. And so the e-collar to me is that shellac, that varnish, okay? And so the deal is you got anything you do with the e-collar, everybody calls it a training collar. And it is a training collar to a point, but it's a polishing collar is really what it is. And I can't believe that term's never been labeled that, because at the end of the day, that's really all it is. We train these dogs to do heel, sit, stay, kennel, hear, know, all that with a collar, whether it's a standard collar or a choke chain or a pinch collar or just your normal nylon or leather collar and leash, way before we ever start using the e-collar. So we actually have that dog doing the commands, whether it be heel, sit, or stay, or kennel, before we use the collar to reinforce that, to polish it and to back it up, okay? The grandest thing about an e-collar is there's no distance limitations. There's no timing limitations. And so your timing and your effort, that level it takes to use e-collar is so minimal that your timing can be impeccable. The physical part of it can be so easy for anybody, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, you can use it. And then the other thing about it is that the main thing is there's no really limitations on how far away. So if your dog is out there at 100 yards and you call him to you and he looks up at you and says, you know what, I'm smelling this rabbit, I'm gonna find this rabbit instead. I don't really need you telling me what to do. And then you can reinforce what you've already taught him and encourage him to come to you. And I like I was telling a guy yesterday, I said, the difference in wearing an e-collar or not, it's kind of like your mom and dad with you. You act a little different when you're in front of your mom and dad than you do when mom and dad's not around. And that's kind of the same way wearing an e-collar. It makes you a citizen. It'll make you a Christian in a hurry. And, it just turns a good dog into a great dog. And that's what we're all trying to do. We've all got good dogs. We're just trying to make them great,
That's a good point. The dogs are acting like you brought it up, and I've never really thought about that way. Like when your parents are right next to you, you're acting a little better than, if you're just running wild out there, nobody's looking over your shoulder. What are some of the basics of that introduction that you use for your dogs? And what are some of the first steps that you do when you're introducing that e-collar?
Heel is my go-to on that. So when we get a dog and we're walking around on lead, we start teaching that dog pressure on, pressure off. So when the dog's out of spot, we're using pressure on with a leash and a collar, just by literally like setting the hook on the collar like you would if you were fishing or snagging, making that dog uncomfortable when he's out of position. And then when the dog's in position, we let all the pressure off the leash and reward him, if you will, so that the dog is rewarded when he's at our side, which is what we want. Well, once you get that dog walking in long, straight lines and we start mixing it up and start doing circles, we start doing figure eights, backing up, and the whole time we're harassing this dog to stay at our side. And the better he gets, the more we ask out of him. I mean, you can actually be walking around out in the yard in a horrible zigzag circles and patterns and squares and just everything, and making this dog stay at your side. And I mean, you'll know when he's trying to do well. He's going to be looking up at you, going to be figuring out where you're at next. He's trying to explain to you, hey, I don't need any more pressure on my neck. I get it. You want me at your side, I'm going to stay there. Once you get that response out of the dog and you see him trying to be good, then you can go to the e-collar, turn it down on low, on a 1 usually is what we do, and we'll put it on the dog's neck. And instead of us using the leash, to snatch the hook like you will when you're fishing, we just start applying pressure with the button, and we're using it on 1. And then here's where we start introducing the dog to the collar, and we're also figuring out what his pain tolerances are with a collar. I've seen 100-pound labs that can barely take a 1. I've seen 35-pound females that can take a 6 or a 7. And, so you got to figure out where that dog's pain tolerance is. And usually what happens when I'm starting a dog off, it'll go 1, I'll go to 2, I'll go to 3. And then all of a sudden, once they start figuring it out, I can go back down to 2, back down to 1. And I run 90% of my dogs on 1s and 2s on a collar, even on a medium or a low setting. It just doesn't take a whole lot. And you're always trying to figure out the lowest setting you can use to get the most response. Okay, it's kind of like using your money. You want to use the least amount of money to get the most in return. And that's what we're always trying to do with the e-collar as well, is trying to use the least amount of pressure to get the most bang for our buck. And so that's what we're looking to do. But I teach the dog to heel, and once I do, then we start some sit. We start some stay, and then we start some kennel, and we're using it. So everywhere we're using the leash and collar to encourage the dog to go, pressure on, pressure off, we go back through it with the e-collar. And we do that with the e-collar. And back to where my word is, we polish with the e-collar. And then the great news is once we start like here, we call the dog to us. We've got a leash on it. We say here. We snatch the dog to us. If he sits there for a second, we just put pressure on the leash and snap him to us, or the long line or whatever. Now we're using an e-collar. Well, now all of a sudden, instead of us using a 30-foot long line or a leash, now it's unlimited because we got an e-collar on there, so we really don't have any limitations. You got as long as that collar will reach, which a lot of them will reach up to half, 3/4 of a mile. That's a long way when you're doing obedience. So anyway, and talking about the e-collars, I've been doing this so long. I bought my first e-collar in the 80s, and it was horrific. Had one red button, and you could weld with it or train your dog with it, or or start a fire with it. It was hot, hot, hot. And today's world, these collars, the technology's come so far, and with SportDog collars, you got 24 different levels minimum. You got a low, medium, and high on the receiver. Each one of them's got a vibrate up to 7 or 8, depending on which collar you got. And you can adjust that thing on the fly at any point in time. And I tell people, that they're like, well, why do I want to adjust that thing so much? I'm like, okay, so your dog's down there smelling that rabbit I'm talking about. Every infraction uses a different level on the collar. So if we're just doing obedience and you're using a 1 or a 2, if we're in a duck blind and they're breaking on the shot, or they're out there hunting a cripple and the duck flew off and you need them to come back to you and a 1 or 2 doesn't do it, no big deal. You can flip that thing to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever you need in order to get the response we're looking for. And that's the greatest technology that anybody could ever ask for, because everything's so adjustable on the fly, and so now we're not having to put any undue pressure on the dog that doesn't need to be. So that's just a beautiful story. The dogs are different today because of it. The breedings are better because of it. We have literally changed the world that we breed dogs to that are e-collar savvy versus the old dogs that were kind of manhandled more. Those dogs are a thing of the past. Those old manhandled dogs are long gone. Nobody wants to deal with them, and everybody wants dogs that have been bred and understand and do well with e-collars. And it's a beautiful thing for sure.
Do you have a specific product that you like for? Let's just use this for an example. You have you're introducing a dog to the collar, introducing the owner, or maybe even like an amateur trainer. Do you have a specific collar that you're like, hey man, you should probably start out with this one right here?
Man, I use the 1825 is the one I use, and I use it year round, really. That's the one I trade with. That's the one I hunt with. I can, obviously I can get get whatever collars we want, and the one I just use, and that's one I sell to my clients. That's one we encourage everybody to get. And the money difference, don't get me wrong, there's money difference in the small ones with the low distance that the collar will work. And to that one, I think the cheapest one's in the 150, 160 range. The one I'm using is 300. Not that that's not a lot of money difference, but it's really not for what you get in return. And, it's just a one-stop shop, and man, you can do everything with it versus trying to have 2 or 3 different collars. You know what I mean? So, it's just, and you know where everything is, you know where everything's adjusted to. It's just real easy. So the 1825 was without a doubt my favorite collar they've got.
So, now that we're getting close into duck season, we're creeping up, we're almost there. What were some of the this is just more on the training and focus, that I want to get into with you. What are the types of things that you were working on, let's say 2 months ago? So let's say late summer in comparison to 2 weeks before duck season with, and it can be any specific example of a dog, but what is the difference in that training mindset from 2 months ago to now?
So in the last 2 months and prior to, from February to let's say now, okay, our big focus, we train a lot of hunt test dogs. We do a lot of standard marks, anywhere from 50 to 250 yards out. We're doing a lot of low distractive, low thrill, we're just doing standard marks. We signal for the bird, guy shoots a gun, blows a duck call, throws the bird, dog goes out there, picks it up, comes back, okay? So pretty low, low stress on the dog, pretty easy deal. There's no real big, tough distractions. It's not very thrilling. It's the same old crap, every day, blah, blah. We're running blinds. We're doing the same thing there. Line them up, send them, stop them, cast them, whatever. Okay. Now we get into right before hunting season. Now we want high distraction, lots of fun, stuff in your face. We may swap, and we've got pits buried with dog boxes in them. We got duck blinds with ramps out the front. We've got, boats that we're working out of. We'll use all this stuff right prior to duck season. But there's lots of duck calling at the kennel right now. There's lots of hooping and hollering, kill this one, get that one. Hey, David, shoot that one. Hey, there's a cripple. We're simulating these hunts, and we're acting like these idiots that I hunt with every day. We'll volley, and everybody, woohoo, man, did you see that? Boom, boom, hey, there's a cripple, shoot that one, boom, boom. There's all this distractions going on for the dog, and we're really not that big on doing that from February to say, the 1st of November, but that's all we do in November. But it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of comical to watch, but it takes a lot of energy, as many dogs as we train. But I tell you, these dogs, they really get jazzed up by it, and they really love it, and they love the energy. And, they got to learn to deal with it because, man, that's what they're going to have out there in a hunting scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those types of distractions, I've seen even some of the better dogs, just get totally thrown off by somebody hooting and hollering or randomly shooting a cripple.
They can blow fuses in their panel pretty quick. Yeah, for sure.
So now the duck season started. Let's move up. So now we're talking mid-December. Let's say we'll use Arkansas as a good example because that's an easy one for you.
Yeah.
The split. All right, you've had 10 days or whatever, that first opener. And what are some of the more common mistakes that you see, people come back to you like, hey, my dog is doing this or my dog is doing that? What are some of the more common mistakes? And then how do you approach that?
I think people really drop their standards during hunting season. When we're training, man, we got our training whistle on, we got our collar in our hand. We're focused strictly on the dog. That's all we think about. It's all about the dog, and that's our focus. And I think people really do a good job, 90% of the time doing that. We get to the duck blind, we get to the pit, we lean up against that tree and we got that duck collar around our neck and we forget what we're doing. Okay. And now the focus becomes off the dog and it becomes about me and me killing. Okay. And so we lose our standard. We let the dogs get away with whining. We let them get away with breaking. We let them get away with running down the bank of the pond. We let them get away with cast refusals. We let them get away with hunting too much. I mean, let them get away with bloody murder. And look, and I'm not telling you I'm any different. I can't put up with a breaking dog. I sure can't put up with a whining dog, but I'm not saying my standard doesn't get dropped too. I got 8 of my closest friends there. or we're all there entertaining. We're having a good time. I don't want to be out there being drill sergeant and hunt 1, 2, 3. It's all about, hey, give me some more shells and hurry up with them sausage and biscuits, and let's kill some more ducks. And so it's not as formal as it is when you and I are out on an afternoon training session, if you will. You know what I'm saying? And so we got to remember that a dog doesn't have a switch on top of their head, training mode, hunting mode. So we need to try to make our standard as close as we can to the same, no matter where we're at, no matter if we're hunting, no matter if we're at home, no matter if we're at the park, no matter if we're at grandma's house, or no matter if we're in the training field. We've got to try to make that standard, because dogs love clarity and they love us being the same person. They don't like multiple personalities any more than we do. And so we need to be the same person no matter what. And that's when, and only then, are we going to get the standard that we're looking for across the board. You know what I mean? Because dogs are very, very good at giving us what we want. We just got to ask for it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, is, having the hunters really focus on the dog. And we've talked about this on this show with almost every trainer that we've had on, is, especially with a new dog, the first hunt and the first, couple hunts even, focusing on that dog and maybe not taking a gun that day. And that's tough for some hunters. And I think, but you prove a good point where with the dogs don't know any different. But if you're totally different and not really as focused on the retrieving, it can cause problems. And, that's something for you to definitely keep in mind.
Well, the next thing, so the big thing that I see, you talk about new dogs, the best thing, or something I think really needs to be addressed at all times is that, like me, I've got a 9-year-old dog that I've hunted every day of season, his whole career. He's 9 years old now. It's time to start kind of thinking about bringing on the new dog and hunting him a little bit. And I've got 2 of them. I've got a lab and I've got a golden retriever, and they're both very, very trained, and they're very good dogs, and they're babies. One of them, the golden retriever, is 2 years old, and she just passed the national, which is quite a feat at that age, and a very, very nice dog. We've got a master title, a hunting retriever champion title, but it doesn't matter. Dog's never been hunted. So I'm fixing to start hunting her this year. And but the dog doesn't have any hunting experience. Well, I've got to remember that she's not going to be Finn on the first hunt or the second hunt or the third hunt. Finn's picked up thousands of ducks. He's been in that boat. He's left that lodge in that boat every day of season. He knows exactly where, when we get to the blind, where he goes. He knows exactly what his job is. He knows where they're going to fall. We got a south wind. He knows where they're going to fall. We got a north wind. He knows where the cripples are going to go before they go. He knows all that. And so you really got to have a pocket of mulligans when you take that young dog out there, and you got to have a pretty dead-gum sense of humor when you go out there and realize that you are dealing with a 6-year-old kid that going duck hunting on his first time. Doesn't matter how much money you spent with a trainer or how much time you spent with that dog throughout the season. Don't matter how good he is or what he can do. This is his first hunt, and you have to be extremely patient, and you will see this light on top of their head, if you will. It's kind of an imaginary deal, but I see it all the time. The first few days, that light's kind of dim. And then about 3 days into it, sometimes it's 2 days into it, sometimes it's after Christmas. But you'll see this light come on. It'll be bright. And that means that dog figured it all out. I see what we've been training for. I see what we're doing. I see what our goals are, and I'm going to implement them right here and now. And it is a beautiful thing as a dog owner to watch that light come on, if you will, on top of their head and become that waterfowl dog that we've all dreamed of owning, And that's what it's all about, and that's what they're all bred to do, and we're all trained to do, and now we're just getting to reap the benefits.
Yeah, no, and that's another good point where bringing a young dog in there is always you know, that's always, I guess once you get accustomed to having an experienced dog, and there's some guys that I hunt with who have some pretty good dogs, and then there's some younger dogs. And some of the experienced dogs, like you said, they know when you get out, they know where they're going to sit. They know where to look. They know, when you start calling, they know exactly what you're calling at and what. And it does. It makes a huge difference. And then when that young dog gets a couple seasons under its belt, they're doing the same thing. So it's all situational, and it's probably, just all the part of the process process of a dog growing up, which is
Man, it's
awesome.
crazy. I wish I could tap into my dog's brain, because I know in the morning he'd have some good input every morning about where we ought to go with the wind and the sun or the clouds or the cloud cover or whatever, because he's just done it so much. He just knows the drill and he knows what he's done. And man, that's just, I tell you, like last year, I kept saying I was going to hunt this other little young dog, and I'm going to hunt her tomorrow. I'm going to hunt her tomorrow. I'm going to hunt her tomorrow. And I'm going to hunt, because every morning I'd get up, and there he is laying there in the bed. And I'd get up, and man, as soon as he'd see me get finished, getting dressed, man, he'd jump up and start spinning circles in the bedroom, going, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I'm like, how am I going to leave that at home? You know what I mean? And go out there and take her and do the same. She didn't even know why we were there, And so I'm like, I don't want to miss one day with you, buddy, but I really need to be hunting this young dog and getting her started and with her career and doing whatever. But these old dogs are sure fun, and they're like an old pair of boots or a old pair of gloves, just fit just right, and it fits you just right. We've built them and we've customized them to what we want, whether it's in the living room or in the bedroom or actually in the duck blind. That's a product of what we've built and the dogs that we have, and it's real easy to be proud of them, and get out there and enjoy them. But you got to have some mulligans in your pocket on them new ones. I'm just telling you now, you gotta be patient with them. That's for sure.
Yeah. See, I'm in the situation where I've got an 11-year-old that has some leg injuries and gotten to the point where she really can't go. She doesn't think that. And that's, she still thinks she can get it. And for about the last 2 years, she hasn't gotten to go a whole lot. She's probably not going to get to go at all this year, just because she'll just injure herself again.
Yeah.
But she certainly still has the want to. But every morning, that's a conversation. I stand there and I'm talking to her and now she's really at 11. She's kind of like, I'm going to pretend like I want to go. But when I walk away from the house, I think at 11, I think she's just curling back up and she's pretty happy going back to bed at 4 a.m.
Yeah, they last a lot longer mentally than they do physically.
No, absolutely. One question I wanted to get into, and this is interesting, it is kind of Arkansas centric, but not really, the shift in more white fronts hunting.
Oh my God, man. They are blistering them things here right now.
Yeah.
They're everywhere you look.
Yeah, the place is crawling with speckle bellies. There's no doubt about it. And the secret's out. I talked to buddies from Indiana to Louisiana, even in Texas, and guys are traveling to Arkansas to hunt this early season. It's pretty impressive. But, from a retriever training perspective, do you have people coming back to you and they're like, hey, man, I've got this dog and we hunt primarily timber, and this dog, the specifics of hunting timber, it's difficult for some dogs, and you're probably training dogs for that, your dogs in general. But do you have people coming back to you like, hey, man, I want to add some new techniques to really focus on specs and spec hunting?
The ground blinds are a must now, that we train them into going in and out of those things. And dogs using A-frames now, these dogs are, using where they're sitting either on the end of them or they're actually inside of them while those guys are hunting so they can hide them. But I'm going to tell you, and, you talked about the last few seasons in Arkansas and the way that's been, these guys are killing more specs now per season, per pit, than they are ducks. And I'm telling you, I know groups already that are that have killed 200 and 300 specs. And, you can't kill but 2 of them, but these guys, they're using these A-frames and they're lining people up, 20 and 30 long in these A-frames, and they're getting their limit. And I know very few people that have been this year already. We're 2 weeks into it that have gone without limiting out. And everybody's killing them. And I manage some pretty good sized farms here for hunting, and all those guys that are hunting there, they're all new to it. They're all in the last couple of years. It's kind of a new gig, but they're absolutely having a blast doing it. It's a lot of fun, especially when you can't hunt ducks. I'm a mallard guy. I like shooting mallards in the timber, but if I can't do that, I'll go shoot specs for sure. And so I've been a few times myself with those guys, and it's definitely fun during our off season for sure.
Yeah, and it really adds an element for the dogs too. I think it's a pretty cool.
I wouldn't go out there without a dog.
Yeah, we hunt them primarily on some dry rice fields, but we hunt them during the season over flooded rice fields. So it really changes. It changes the dynamic for the dog, and certainly you don't want to be out there chasing a crippled speck across 1,000 yards of rice field, because that's a bad deal.
Right.
So, the last thing I want to touch on with you, and it's something that I was actually going through SportDog's website and just kind of looking at it, and you did a piece on like kind of the safety of, training your dogs for snow goose season, which is also big in Arkansas, but it's big, in a lot of different places. And some of the guys that I actually snow goose hunt with from Arkansas refuse to allow people to have dogs. And at first I was like, what a bummer. But then I realized that it's because they hunted with a bunch of dogs that were out of control. And when you got 10 guys and guns and decoys and, the audio of the snow goose collar, it's a lot of chaos for a dog and it can really be dangerous. How do you go ahead and approach that from a training perspective?
Well, the biggest thing I think of when I think of snow goose hunting is extension tubes. I think of, 3.5-inch shells, and I think of lots of people. And that's not for every dog. And then I think of the excitement level of the e-collars or the electronic collars and, just how slow the birds come in. I mean, I've seen groups when we're laying there snow goose hunting with people, and they'll start balling up at, 25, 3,500 feet up, and they just circle and circle and circle on a good high-pressure bluebird day, with a good, nice wind. And then it takes them literally 5-10 minutes to get to the gun range. And, man, that excitement and that anxiety from that dog is about to blow a gasket, because everything, you see a mallard, here it comes. You shoot it, you might have a minute or 2 minutes, and the deal with a snow goose, it's forever. And I think the anticipation of that for a dog is, they're about to, blow every fuse in the panel. So I think the excitement level's there, but just the raw killing that goes on and the numbers, you can, man, big volleys, lots of birds falling everywhere, dogs running out to pick up long birds, picking up short birds. It is a pretty dysfunctional retriever training event. You know what I mean? And so
there's absolutely no way to recreate
that.
And
why would you?
It's like,
you know what I mean? But it's definitely. If you send a dog on a retrieve, if you're at home plate to the last bird falls out, he's in right field, and you send him and he overruns 15 or 20 birds. Well, guess what? He's going to stop and pick them up. Well, the next thing you know, he's not going to want to blast out there to 200 or 300 yards like he was on that last retrieve. And it causes dogs to hunt short and want them hunting the decoys, and because they found so many birds there like that before. And it's just dogs are good at what they practice, just like me and you. If you're into baseball and you practice baseball, you probably be good at baseball. If you're doing basketball, same thing. If you're doing golf, same thing. And it's whatever your dog does, if he does it enough, he'll become accustomed to it. The problem is that most people don't go on snow goose hunts very often. That's something they do as a novelty after duck season, in the spring migration, and they're not getting to go very much. So the dogs aren't real good at it, or all that chaos and all that excitement and all that going on. So that's why those goose guides really don't like those dogs being out there. Plus, you don't want a dog that. Man, I don't even know how to describe it, but those 100 shots going off at one time is more than a lot of dogs can withstand. And a lot of these dogs, people that are going as paid hunters that don't have a lot of hunting experience, and they're like, man, I'm going to carry my dog out there and give him some hunting experience. Well, that ain't really the way to start it off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so he ended up running the hunt for the rest of them, and that's not what anybody wants to do either. So, and we sure don't want to embarrass anybody in front of 8 or 10, 12 people out there while you're trying to hunt.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason you see a lot of these guys not really welcoming, customers or clients' dogs out there in the spread.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for everybody, dangerous for the dogs, dangerous for the hunters, and it truly is a safety issue. Chris, before I get you out of here, I just wanted to ask one more question and really kind of narrow down, and you may have already kind of touched on it, but I really want, your advice. What is the one thing that you want people to take away regarding e-collars? And the way that you use them and the way that you feel like everyone else should use them. What's the one little takeaway?
I think the biggest thing that everybody, no matter if you're a duck hunter or somebody that just has a pet companion dog, or if you're both, I think the e-collar has changed the dog world tremendously. I would love to know the number of dogs that e-collars have saved their lives. You know, if you could call God up today and say, hey, how many dogs has an e-collar saved their life? And people are like, what do you mean by that? So when you walk out in your front yard tonight and you're letting your dog do its business before you go to bed, and then your neighbors across the street, Chihuahua, comes running out, raising Cain, barking at your dog and thinking he's somebody, and then your dog decides to take off and run wide open across the street, when you got an e-collar on, you just flip that button over there and he turns around and comes right back to you because he's collar conditioned to do that. And in the past, if your dog wasn't collar conditioned to do that, then your dog just might have had a horrible accident in the middle of the street. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that everybody can enjoy the e-collar, you know, through that way, because you can, you know, get the dog's attention when you need to get the dog's attention, and you can make those corrections when you need to make the dog's corrections. And I think that's where the e-collar has stepped in. And let's face it, it doesn't matter if you're a duck hunter or just a dog owner. You can use that and apply it to save, you know, your best friend.
No, that's awesome, man. That's really good advice. And Chris, this has been great. It's been a great conversation. Hoping the Arkansas opener is good for you. You know, hope it's good for everyone. I think your expectations are pretty good. I mean, you've done this long enough. You know, not much water on the landscape. You kind of know what you're dealing with here. So hey, good luck with the opener and throughout the rest of the season. Hopefully, we can get you back on the DU podcast sometime in December.
Sounds good, buddy. Take care.
All right, take care, Chris. I'd like to thank my guest, Chris Akin from Webb Footed Kennels and SportDog Brand Products, for coming on and talking about some different e-collar training tips and just SportDog Brand products that he uses. I'd like to thank Chris Isaac for putting the show together and getting it out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for joining us on the DU Podcast and supporting wetlands conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.